This week on the Squatchers Lounge podcast, David the Reverend Jeff take you to Western Pakistan to discuss the Barmanou, the Pakistani Bigfoot equivalent. No Bigfoots in the Middle East, you say? Well, I say different. Pakistan's a very special area. We're going to look at the highlights and lowlights and whatnot. But first, some news, campus trips for stupids, possibly a quasi, and of course, the Reverend Jeff Kelly.
As always, the host of this mess is I, the Reverend Jeff Kelly. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in to the Squatchers Lounge podcast tonight. Wednesday night. Oh, God, it's almost April already. Can you believe that? A quarter of the year's almost gone already. Over there is Dr. David Backdorf, Esquire, pseudoscientist. How you doing, man?
Ready for some pseudoscience tonight, you bet you're
ready with the science. That's from Pakistan. People say Pakistan. You can't have Bigfoot in Pakistan. Well, you're wrong, and we're going to tell you why you're wrong tonight. But before we get there, we're going to do some other things that's wrong, and that's usually in the news. That's so right. We're going to get a little newsy with it. There's a bunch of stuff to get through here, but we're going to push right on through and get it over with pretty friggin' quick. In Borneo, they find the rhino species long thought gone. That's right. We got another pygmy rhino coming out of Borneo. For the first time in 40 years, a species of rhino has been seen, I can't pronounce that word, in Indonesian part of Borneo. The Sumatran Rhino, a female, was caught in a pit trap on March 12th. The Worldwide Fund made the announcement of the discovery on Tuesday. Sumatran rhinos are one of two species that exist in Indonesia. This is an exciting discovery and a major conservation success, says... Yeah, that guy, the CEO of WWF Indonesia. Sorry about that. Dude, if you don't have a consonant where it belongs, I'm kind of lost with that. We now have proof that a species once thought extinct still roams the forest, and we now strengthen our efforts to protect this extraordinary species. Check that out, dude. It's a little tiny rhino in Borneo. That's pretty damn cool.
It's pretty cool. It's pretty rare, and good it didn't break its leg.
Yeah, that would have sucked a lot. Hey, we're going to kill the very last Borneo rhino in a pit trap. Whoops. Yeah, that would have sucked just a little tiny bit. Whoopsie. Check it out. CNN.com. Okay, here's another one. Cryptozoo News. Was the Atlas bear filmed? Oh, my God, I don't know. Cryptozoology site passes along the news that the allegedly extinct Atlas bear may have been filmed in the forest of Algeria, Africa. That's right. That's what they call bears down there, are Atlas bears, and they thought to be extinct for a very long time until this particular video comes out of the region. And you know, it sure as hell looks like a real bear to me.
Yeah, except for there's a couple very key features of this particular creature. It looks weird to us because we know dogs and wolves, but this looks like it's got that long, thick neck of
canine muzzle.
Hyena, actually, which is not related to your dog. It's
not related to the Atlas bear either, though.
But it's probably not related to the Atlas bear either. But it does have those big shoulders, and it does not look like a dog because it is not a dog. So, it looks similar, but the same way a bear looks similar to a dog.
Well, as with all cryptids, we'll find out more next time when more video comes in. Hey, this one I sent to you, and I knew last week I bitched about the chimps and God and are they having religion and everything else. But I actually sat down and read this. Ian Redmond passed this one along to us, the great primatologist himself. Every human culture has believed in spirits, gods, or some kind of other divine being. That's why human beings have often been called homo religioso. Now, some people take this long history of belief in the otherworldly as evidence for God. Doesn't it explain why religion continues to be so pervasive? But many scientists are coming up with their own, of course, decidedly secular theories about the origins of faith. In fact, over the last few years, a small cottage industry made up of scientists and philosophers has devoted itself to demystifying the divine. Basically, what the article's gone on to say and talk about is how they're studying gorillas and chimpanzee troops in the wild for religious-like behavior or cult-like behavior or something that they do for absolutely no reason that something with a little bit smarter brain may start to do religiously, hence the birth of religion, something that you do for no other reason other than you think you're supposed to do it.
So my first, basic, and not to poo-poo everything that's always up here about this whole topic, is that science and philosophy are two tools that we use to answer questions, and they use a very different process, both of them. So scientists and philosophers technically should never work together. It would be like a mechanic and a carpenter.
Peanut butter in my chocolate. You got your chocolate in my peanut butter.
Well, but sometimes it works out, right? Peanut butter and chocolate. But sometimes
when you're making up things about God, apparently that's one of those times that chocolate and peanut butter go together.
Sometimes you end up with a mechanic and a carpenter working together, and they don't know what to do. Right. So that's the first problem. The second problem is that they've created a question, and this is the philosophical approach. You create a question and you develop answers, and then you can find out if they're, if they're sound, right? And what they've done is they've asked a question that there's no reason to create a hypothesis about this. It's just an interesting question. That's what philosophy is used for. And if you come up to a philosophical answer, you can test it scientifically using subjects like primates and whatnot. So I see how this is going together, but really it's kind of the same thing that we're going to talk about in another article, which is kind of prefabricating a notion and then expressing it through. I'll be like the first. Exactly. I'll be the first atheist to say or whatever, like that this is probably people that are trying to prove a point that
religion isn't really God.
That fits their way of thinking, and I see that, but it's also not how either of those two. It's not how philosophy or science works. You don't just say, "Hey, I have this idea, and I'm going to go out and try to prove it scientifically." No.
Well, anthropologist Barbara J. King says, you're wrong, buddy. So check this one out at salon.com. It's a little bit older article, but I thought it was fantastic considering what we were talking about last week with the chimps.
I think that's
masturbate. That was the birth of religion.
Bam, poop, masturbate. I'm down with that in a lot of ways. And I'm down with the theories that we were kind of talking, like the ideas that we were talking about, where you're talking about not spiritualism, but you're talking about ritualism, and there's a big difference there. And the spiritualism comes with a lot of the
religiousism comes from what's it? I forget it. My tongue is tied. I'm not going to stutter about it. So yeah.
Well, okay. So the difference between spiritualism and religion specifically versus ritualism. Ritualism is something that can be observed and learned. But spirituality is something, if you're going to teach somebody how to be spiritual, which is the fundamental aspects of religion, you must be able to, you have to express these very complex and abstract thoughts verbally, and teach them abstractly and verbally, which is one of the things that makes us very special and different than the primates and apes. And so I totally get the ritualistic thing, and it's really that's totally, there's a basis there, and I'm not saying that there's not a basis there. I'm just saying that when you take the two concepts and you try to smash them together, it's not going to work very well. Anyway,
exactly.
Rant.
Thanks to Dean for our quasi theorist for this one, a world map of Neanderthal and Denisovan. I can never say that word. Ancestry in modern humans. Basically, it's a map of the world that shows you who's contaminated with what. And it really kind of gives a good picture of where the pre-Homo sapiens traveled to before we got here.
Not only the travel, but if you have to think of it also is in gene flow, right? Which is different, because our meetings with Neanderthal happened much earlier than our meetings with the Denisovan. Part of that is geographic because they were further away and they were further east. Part of that is just because everybody that was coming out of Africa hit the Neanderthal first, and so part of that genome goes with the Denisovan genome, which is why it's taken a long time to really start to take this apart and depict different aspects.
Could you imagine being the first Homo sapien troop to knock boots with a Neanderthal and a Denisovan? Dude, you ain't nowhere near as ugly as that Neanderthal bitch. Holy hell, come on back.
Like you had I mean, you at that point, you're just like high fiving, bro sapien over here, being like, dude, I own Homo.
That's right, man. I've been with them all, man. If I could get me one of them little hobbit bitches when I was at the island, I'd have had her too.
We'll get there.
That's right. We're almost on that trail. But I mean, there's so much evidence to the evolutionary path of the homos standing up and walking out of Africa that guess what? That's what we're talking about tonight too with the Pakistani Bigfoot. It could have walked up and walked out too. Look, we're talking about right there. But we're not there yet. So let's get through this one and move.
But again,
along.
You could take that overlay and look at that back in the areas that we're talking about and look at the paths that our ancestors took. And we're talking in the hundreds to 30,000 years ago area. We're not talking about cars. We're not domesticating horses or anything like that at this point. We're just walking. We're following herds of wildebeest, right?
Hungry hippos. So check that one out, ScienceDaily.com. That one will tell you. There's a link in the Squatcher's Lounge if you want to see that one. Siberian unicorn went extinct much later than we thought. And, this isn't the only thing we come up with. We're hearing more and more and more where these things went extinct much later in time than we've always expected they have. I guess our testing measures are improving. I'm not sure. But researchers working in Kazakhstan, that's right, that place actually exists. It's not a figment of Brat's imagination.
We may see it when we hit the googly earth.
Report a new fossil site called, that locality place, which the remains of massive mammals, including mammoths, steppe elephants, prehistoric bison, and giant rhinoceros. Wouldn't that be rhinoceri?
If only.
I'm not going to even attempt the Latin name for it, which may have inspired the legend of the unicorn, according to findings published by the American Journal of Applied Sciences. Radiocarbon dating the extinct rhino bones suggests the species died off tens or even hundreds of thousands of years later than we thought, which would put it into post-history. So past the point of recorded history, which would start the unicorn, the unicorn.
Yes, that's what we're talking about. Like the oral history. Where does this come from? What what are the truths? And this could be a portion of it. However, I think it looks like the wizard of the rhinoceros family myself. So it would have been maybe the origin of the wizard.
The wizard.
The pointed hat.
That's right. Check it out, iflscience.com. This one was kind of interesting, and the only reason I kind of brought this one up, this is Sarah Woodfin holds a living entomite striped rabbit in her arms, the first scientist to do so, photographed by the University of East Anglia. So what I was doing, I was going through and I was reading this article. It's like, okay, so they're out researching these rabbits, and they're very, very rare. No one's really ever gotten close to one before. And all of a sudden, this thing comes hopping up to them and jumps up in her arms and lets her touch this thing. And is it a case of habituation? Like everybody, the habituation method. This is exactly what it would take for Bigfoots to be habituated to us, or us habituated to them. I can never really remember which way that went. But, dude, how cool is that for the thing to just hop up to you and go, yeah, you can pet me now? Have you domesticated that rabbit? No, that rabbit is still feral. But there's a habituation going on in this situation.
Will that rabbit potentially bite the shit out of you? Yeah.
Yes, you can plan on it. It's going to take blood and probably give you, herpes.
But honestly, she
Like a bad date on Saturday night.
hashtag worth it. It's a rare rabbit that wants to snuggle. I mean, come on.
Well, yeah, I met a couple of those rare things that like to snuggle on a Saturday night too, but they usually send you home with crabs.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. The rabbit was very handsome with dark stripes against a pale gold background with a red rump. I mean, that's just the cutest thing in the world. But literally, is a Sasquatch going to allow its baby to come walk up and sit in your lap and play patty cake with you? I'm just not seeing that happen.
Maybe if you're sitting outside researching its rabbit hole for the past 6 months and it hops by without any negative aspects for the first time, it probably takes off. Second, third, 400 times. It just takes off. But then the next time it's like, oh, it's just you. Okay.
Oh,
That's the first step. And then 120 more times after that, it's like, hey, you look snuggly.
Absolutely crazy. So snuggle up with your Bigfoot friends and tell us about your habituation, and we'll not listen to it. Hey, wolves slaughter 19 elk in Wyoming just for shits and giggles. That's right. A pack of wolves killed a herd of elk earlier this month in Wyoming. Officials say that there's nothing they can do in such cases because wolves are federally protected and managed. So here you go. You get a whole bunch of wolf packs and you decide, hey, let's just release them back into the parks unmanaged. Let's not make a wolf sanctuary. No, that'd be stupid. Let's just release them into the wilds where we've been managing these these herds of elk for, I don't know, the last 100 years, and we'll just let them decimate them. You dumb shits. Hunters told you this was going to happen. We begged you not to let this happen. We begged you not to do this. And here it is less than a half a decade later, and they're killing off the damn elk herds. Morons.
So we were talking about sustainability in a lot of ways at work today, and I brought up a few key points and key facts, and one of which is, there's two in the trophic pyramid. There's the food substances that you need to protect, like we're talking like crustaceans and shellfish and things for other fish to eat. That then the large predators come in, but you can't just drop okay, so it's not sustainable to just drop a bunch of large predators in there, which is what can happen in this situation. If you've managed tightly a herd of elk and then you put 3 or 4 packs of wolves out there, the elks are not going to have the innate fear of, obviously, these are some stupid fucking elk.
Yeah, that's very true. But remember also, these were not fed upon. These were simply killed for fun. They were not eaten upon at all. They were literally hunted down by the pack and killed. And then another one was
there is no way for one pack of wolves that it should be that easy.
So that's the problem. It's
these elk were not taught from birth to fear wolves.
No, because wolves have been eradicated in their, for generations.
Exactly. So they have no reason to fear wolves, which is why it was so easy, which is why it's not sustainable just to throw them out there and see what happens. No, over the course of time and over the course of all the babies gotten eaten and all the, all the killings and slayings, and you get down to a few, so what is, how do you manage that? Well, first you have to increase the population so that you can add in the predator at the top of that trophic pyramid, and then it can manage itself. But at this rate, these elk are just too stupid, and we can't do anything for them.
You need to have some wolf sanctuaries. You need to keep them wolves locked up because they'll just decimate populations for fun. Anyhow, land bridges linking ancient India, Eurasia, were freeways for biodiversity exchange. And that's part of the things that we're going to be talking about tonight, which is why I brought this one up again. That particular area is exactly the landing zone for where we're going to be going through tonight. If you're going from one, you're going to you're going here. If you're going through the area we're talking about tonight, the Middle East, where are you going to end up?
This is where our ancestors ended up, and this is how did I'm sorry, the orangutan don't swim good. The Simon gibbon don't swim good. So how did they get there? Well, this is your exacting answer. This is how they got there. And this is why when they're trapped and they do survive on these island territories, that they were able to survive because whatever it was that completely wiped them out can't swim either. So if that's disease can't swim without a host. So if the orang can't swim, then disease can't wipe them out on Borneo if it wiped them out through, Southeast Asia.
Exactly. And we talked about this time and time again, how things would get from one place to another. Well, throughout time, things don't always look the way they are now. We don't even know how they looked 100,000 years ago because, well, we can only guess at that. So move right along on that one as well, because Silence Daily is coming right back up against Australopithecus.
Australopithecus
fossils found east of the Great Rift Valley. New fossils from Kenya suggest that an early hominid species, Australopithecus afarensis. Hey, I got that right. Lived far eastward beyond the Great Rift Valley and much further than previously thought. An international team of paleontologists led by Emma, maybe you need a vowel there, Mbala of Mount Kenya University and Mastro, forget all that, reported findings of fossilized teeth and a forearm bone from an adult male and 2 infant Afrosensis from exposure eroded by the Cantus River on the outskirts of Nairobi. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Where the hell did they find all this crap? Nairobi. There we go. So, they're far further beyond the Great Valley, clear over to Nairobi than we thought before. That's a long way to kind of wander for these early little 3.5-foot bipedal thingies.
Well, and the one thing I kind of reread a couple of the articles, and one other thing I didn't catch out of this was the actual, if they had a good date on those. The Afarensis
believed to have lived 3.7 to 3 million years ago, as characterized by fossils like Lucy from Ethiopia,
which is in the Great Rift Valley, which is not. So this one fossil probably doesn't have good dating on it yet, but very interesting to see how early on the Afarensis left the Great Rift Valley. I think it would be even more fascinating to find out that they didn't originally come from
and they were just passing through the Great Rift Valley.
And that just happens to be where we have the best fossil bed, and there would be earlier versions of Afarensis, because Afarensis is kind of where the Australopithecine, where we kind of have a big gap, is moving into the early Australopithecine. So it would be really cool to see something like that. I'm going to stay tuned for this, but we know that these were not these ancestral apes were not tied to the wood line anymore. They were able to move and use rocks and grasslands and minimal trees to gather what they needed. And they could have gone anywhere. They could have gone all over the place. And so it's very, very fascinating to kind of see somebody finally find some good evidence to support that. Yeah, they weren't just stuck over here like it looks like. We just get a lot of good fossils from here, but they really went probably all over the place, which is exactly the whole idea of what we're talking about. What I like to talk about with Sasquatch is that it probably is an out of Africa early ancestor like this that made it through the Middle East in a time when it was still viable. It wasn't always a desert, and on through, and we'll talk about some other areas later.
Exactly. So check this one out. Again, it's silencedaily.com. Hobbit-like hominids died out sooner than thought. Were humans to blame? We originally thought that the ancient hobbit-like humans who lived on the island in Indonesia thousands of years ago died out far sooner than thought, and modern humans could have been to blame. First reported in 2004 and officially named Homo floresiensis. The fossilized remains of the hobbit-like hominids were unearthed in the Liang Bua cave on the Indonesian island of Flores. Just over a meter tall and a long-lost species, had elongated feet like the hobbits and a brain the size of a grapefruit. That's not a bad-sized brain. The original studies of the remains and the deposits of them suggested the creatures could have lived as recently as 12,000 years ago, but new research now overturns that idea, proposing instead that our long-footed cousins disappeared at least 50,000 years ago, and hence that humans might have played a role in their demise. Look at these little bastards. Kick them, they're weird.
I'm trying to figure out where they get this long-footed thing. Everything that I've seen has been somewhat proportional, and anyway,
some are longer than others, bro. It depends on what.
Yeah.
I mean,
This may be the Guardians adding this to make them a little bit more maybe
well, you know what they say about guys with long feet, right?
yeah, that they're really short. Tolkien maybe talked about the long hairy feet. I don't know, but this is that's not a thing. But yeah, this is an interesting take back of if there is anything to this, it does put the demise of the Florenziensis closer to our arrival.
Right. The original date ranges between 19,000 and 12,000 years ago were taken from a charcoal remains in the cave. Now they've taken a tooth from one of the dwarf elephant-like creatures that was found with the remains, and when it was dated to around 74,000 years ago. So now you're dating carbon material versus tooth-like material. We don't even know if the freaking dating process is actually the same between the two. We're just assuming that they are because we haven't done it enough to really blah 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 blah. The worst is only 6,000 years old. Man lived with dinosaurs.
Yeah, that. No, I'd like to see a little bit more. I mean, they have it came from the same site, it probably came from the same substrate and the same layer, and there were these different things that they tested and they came out to different ages. Well, that can happen fairly easily because that other thing is another thing.
Right, and we know that this won't be the only report that says it. The next one we hear, they'll be only gone for the last 5,000 years. Yeah, and they were hanging out with Noah during the big flood. They were on the ark,
which is great. That's how science works. Somebody says, "Wait, not so fast," but this, and then,
but wait, there's more.
The thing about science reporting is that they report it like it's over. It's like, oh, game over, man. That's what they're like 50,000 years old. Oh no, that's not all true.
Yeah, so we'll keep an eyeball on the hobbits and we'll find out exactly what's going on with them later on.
Nasty hobbitses.
Hobbits, my precious, you steals isn't. Ah! Okay, college instructor presents conclusive scientific proof of Bigfoot at research conference.
Holy shit!
That's what I just said, dude. I mean, this literally came out today. When I saw this, my jaw dropped to the ground. Just like when I heard on the radio that two hunters killed a Bigfoot and put it in a freezer in Georgia. I was just like, oh, when this article came up, I was just like, really? It's over. Thankfully. Hallelujah, it's over. Well, Mitchell N. Townsend, BAMAEDDABD.
If you have that many letters after your name,
letters after our names too, pal. I mean, you can make up anyhow.
Yeah. So if you put a bunch of letters after your name, it makes you really easy to Google. Just by the way,
presented forensic science proof of what he says. Wait a second. Proof isn't what he says. Proof is proof. It's factual conclusion. Okay. Of conclusive evidence. So he says it's conclusive evidence, but it's not conclusive evidence. It's presented scientific proof of a giant unclassified hominin. Now, is it a hominin? Bigfoot.
It's a hominin.
Yeah, at the 69th annual Anthropology Research Conference in Tacoma, Washington. That's right. Townsend and one of his former students found and analyzed 3 different prey bone assemblages around Mount St. Helens. And he says that the tooth marks imprinted on the bones were made by an 8'8", not an 8'7", not an 8'9", but an 8'8" tall hominin that left 16-inch footprints and other forensic behavioral information that Townsend was able to situate in current scientific research.
Yeah, bam, poop, masturbate, and now we eat.
That's right. Bam, poop, masturbate. Bigfoot's over. Well, okay. Thanks, everybody, for watching the Squatchers Lounge podcast over all these years. I guess we don't need to do this show anymore. But wait, as usual, there's more. Our buddy, Guy Edwards of the Bigfoot Lunch Club, he puts up a college instructor evidence of Bigfoot chewing on deer The tooth marks imprinted on the bones were made by an 8'8" tall hominin that left 16-inch footprints, said Mitchell and Townsend, BAMAEDD of Central Washington, in an article titled "College Instructor Presents Conclusive Scientific Proof at Bigfoot Research Conference." Okay, Dr. Jeff Meldrum, ding, 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 I need some money, is quick to report out the term conclusive is not entirely accurate, and he shared the link to the article today on his Facebook page. And a matter of fact, that's where I got this link from, was Dr. Meldrum's page. I do follow the doctor. I want to hear what he has to say. Doesn't mean I believe it. Doesn't mean I actually even follow any of it, but I do at least pay attention to what he posts. I don't understand why anymore. The article reports how deer offer clues to how Bigfoot may have been bone chewing on the deer population near Mount St. Helens. I don't know, dude. This isn't the first time we've heard this. This came out a couple of months ago. We blew through this then, and now all of a sudden he's still presenting it as conclusive proof at the anthropology research Bigfoot extravaganza. Extravaganza. I really.
Yeah, so if you go to BigfootLunchClub.com and look for this, you could actually read his abstract, which the abstract is summarized in the article, and then there's actually linked to the full research paper. Research paper.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a difference between a research paper and a published article,
right?
So I actually took the time to
no peer review, no publication.
Okay, it's 94 pages long.
Wow!
So I skimmed it.
Spent a lot of time on it.
He did, and a lot of it just has to do with it looks it's going to be a really riveting presentation, but a lot of it is actually teaching people about well, not only like about Bigfoot research in general and the history of, and there's all that in there, and that's always a big red flag for me too. And also has a basically just trying to teach us about the different types of teeth in your own mouth. Mm-hmm. So he's trying to convince us of the different types of teeth. Well, okay, if this is a paper written for peer review, you're going to assume that whoever is reviewing your paper knows the goddamn teeth in your mouth.
and why exactly would early teeth in your mouth?
If he's going to refer back to other things, he's going to refer back to, you know, like the early hominin is what he's talking about, and you know, ripping sinew from ribs and what he was discussing there. And he also shows a great graphic of of what I actually think is probably a pretty good culprit, which is a wolverine that actually shows some of the similar morphology, but in different areas of the mouth. But this is one of those research papers that you're just going to have to go into for yourself and decide, because I can't make up your mind.
Wolverine! I can read it to you, but I can't comprehend it for you. Yeah, so taking a look, I wouldn't make a big deal of it. I think it's bunk. I think just another scientist trying to reach into a retirement for, you know, taking this book on tour with the Bigfoot guys. I don't see...
So, scientist, you know...
Got a lot of letters after his name. He's got
a lot of letters after his name. I did some Googling.
A little googly.
A little googly. And if you want to know about this gentleman, you know, he Professor Townsend is a presidential international honors scholars with degrees from the University of the Puget Sound, bachelor's, Pepperdine Graduate School of Education in Psychology. It's his master's in master arts. Has almost completed the ED from the University of Calgary's graduate institution.
How do you have an EDE after your name if you ain't an EDE? Liar!
In addition, he has subsequently completed a second master's degree from Gonzaga's University of Professional Studies in Organizational Leadership. So why he has any business reporting on the physical, anthropological mechanics
You'd think he'd be a dentist. You'd think he'd be a dentist if he was gonna report on the gnawings on bones. You would think he would be a dentist, right?
I would think he would be a physical anthropologist with
a sideline and dental.
With specific knowledge.
My uncle's got a really great set of tools. We can fix it.
Yeah, with hominin teeth and their actual their mechanics and studying what they have done to bones or other things. And so you would assume that he would have some sort of knowledge in that, and it does not appear that from his BA, MA, almost ED,
almost EDE,
that is the case. So I say it takes a pseudoscientist to know a pseudoscientist, and that's my story.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. You can check that one out. Definitely go look at the Bigfoot Lunch Club and get him some hits. Click on the ads. It's always good for us.
Also, again, if anybody has that many letters after the name, just make sure don't highlight the first, middle initial, and last name. Highlight those letters too. Plug it in there, and pretty much most of what I got was the Bigfoot story and different blogs of that. But got where he actually works too. So there you go. And it's technological learning, yada yada yada. It uses basically it uses his resources that he has in his degrees, and it's probably totally fine. But I say, watch what you listen to.
I'm really
He's a college professor. It must be true.
I'm really bad at connect the dots. Can you figure out what this one is? Seattle Met put out an article, The Secret Lives of Bigfoot Hunters. It's only by moonlight in the Tennessee woods. Renee Holland cups her hands around her mouth and emits a guttural, horrifying shriek, something halfway between the scream of a cougar and the scream of a person being disemboweled by a cougar. This is actually a pretty good article. The scientist turned reality TV star and true believer turned analyst are both on a quest for the one of the Northwest elusive mysteries. Talks about Derek Randall's in here as well. Talks about Renee Holland, who I met when we were up in Fortuna for taping of Finding Bigfoot, and she was dude. I always had such a really crappy just a crappy idea of what she was like in person, but she was delightful. I was mad about it too. She was too damn delightful to hate. So
I wanted to hate you so bad.
I really did want to hate her so bad. But for hours we sat around, me and Kip and Renee talked for a couple of hours. It was kind of strange because Cliff and I, we already knew Cliff and we'd already had those conversations with him. So I was interested in really what her skeptical idea of what Bigfoot should be or whatever. And she's more open-minded to what the TV would leave you to believe. But so check it out. The SeattleMet.com just came out this week, so it should be easy to pick up as well. But it's a neat little article on Bigfoot. And finally, wrapping up the news tonight, because good God Almighty, Finding Bigfoot's 2-hour season premiere around Mount Shasta. The Paranormal Bigfoot is going to feature our pals Greg and Dana Newkirk. That's right. The people behind The Week in Weird are going to be out Bigfooting with our people from Finding Bigfoot. Look at Bobo, man. Bobo's lost so much weight. He looks so good. I hope he's not sick. Matt, who cares? But we'll see how they
pony.
Well, he doesn't have the Marcy Darcy from 1991 at least anymore, 1988. We'll see how they approach the paranormal. All the woo people will be out in force, and we already talked about it Monday night. Offer Meds Mary, she'll be tuned in, looking for that ding-a-ling friggin' spider monkey out there, I'm sure. But I really want to see how they tackle the paranormal research, because Mount Shasta is known to be one weird ass place.
Weird.
Hey, you know what time it is? It's mid-time, so we're going to get our little quasi on and get some Dean Cooper's quasi theories. And now, quasi theories from a quasi scientist with your host, Dean Cooper.
2 comets plus a Hopi prophecy do not equal doomsday from a 12th planet. So, 2 comets are visible in the night sky this past week. This occurrence has resulted in an overstimulation of the residual gray matter left in the skulls of Zecharia Sitchin fans. These poor souls believe that ancient aliens roamed our planet early in human history, mucking about with our DNA, building pyramids for us, and generally educating us in all skills useful in becoming civilized. I have seen any number of posts, sharings, news alerts, and what have you, declaring that a Hopi tribal prophecy says that when two comets appear in the sky at the same time, the planet Nibiru will begin its return to the inner solar system. Nibiru being the 12th planet that Sitchin declared to be the home planet of our alien masters. The Anunnaki will thenceforth wreak havoc upon us. It is well known that Sitchin pulled his theory out of his butt. It is also known that the Hopis knew nothing of a 12th planet, let alone one named Nibiru. Which brings me to the whole Nibiru being the home planet of the Anunnaki aliens concept. Nibiru is an ancient Sumerian word. It is one of the many names of the Sumerian sun god, Marduk, sun god as in the god of the sun. Not the god of an unknown planet out there in the Kuiper belt, but the sun around which Earth orbits. You know, that big, bright, shiny thingy up in the sky that causes what we scientists call daytime. The Anunnaki are the Sumerian pantheon of gods, of whom Nibiru was one. Anunnaki is a compound word. Anu is the god of the heavens. Ki is the goddess of the earth. The Anunnaki are, collectively, the gods of heaven and earth. The Sumerian Babylonian mythology is essentially the same mythology of the Egyptians, Greeks, and Celts, and is very comparable to Hindu and Zoroastrian mythology. None of these ancient peoples thought of their gods as physical beings, alien or not. As the great mythologist Joseph Campbell wrote, fortunately, it will not be necessary to argue that Greek, Celtic, or Germanic myths were mythological. The peoples themselves knew they were myths. Sitchin, von Däniken, and all their ancient alien silliness is becoming a sort of modern mythology. The differences between now and way back then is that the ancient mythologies actually make sense when you know how to understand them, and they are to be understood as myths. The ancient gods had no interest in anal probes, and they needed no saucers to fly about in. This has been Dean Cooper, quasi-scientist, enlightening you with my quasi-theory of the week. You may read the text of this on my blog at bydean.com. That's BHAIDIN.com.
There you have a little bit of quasi-theories from a quasi-scientist, our buddy Dean Cooper. Thanks, pal. Now it's time for a little bit of camping tips for shoppers.
I wouldn't say that they had no interest in anal probing, Dean. Anyway, moving on.
Camping tips for stupids. Tip number 10. Camping gear is essential to camping. Without it, you're sort of just living homeless style, buck naked in the campground, like a weirdo named Todd. One of the most indispensable items to never go camping without is the almighty duct tape. Now in Hunter Orange for stupids. You just never know when you might need a strip of durable all-weather tape to secure crap together. Whether it be your nagging girlfriend's mouth, your butthole because you were stupid and drank the water straight from the creek without filtering it, or when the great protector Gajardin inspects your tent for treats. Gajardin. Huh? That's what I said. Gafargan. Gajardin. Gabargan. Gajardin. Kablargan. Katardin, Kajorgan, Katardin, Kajarjan, Katardin, Gaborbin, Katardin, Kanardin, Katardin, Gafarchin, Katardin, Profit Margin, Katardin, Ho Chi Minh, Katardin, Pickles and Margarine, Katardin.
God damn it, man.
I'll make you my bitch. Actually, guys, I don't mind it if you just called me Todd. Shut up! Moving on. Duct tape has many practical uses throughout the campsite, and a roll should always be Tartan. This has been Camping Tips for Stupids. Remember to spay and neuter your... I sing. What? Chicka, chicka, boom, boom. Chicka, chicka. That's boom, it. I'm out of here. I quit. Oh, girl. I can't do this. Nope, I quit. I can't do this. Chicka, chicka, boom, boom. Oh, girl. You so fine. Boom, chicka, chicka, boom, boom. Like and subscribe. Boom, boom, chicka, chicka, boom, boom. Oh, girl.
I'm sorry, folks. Okay, back to the show. Hey, let's give a little bit of shout outs to the people that are hiding out there in the chat room. Woo, boy, somebody better tell me they like these, or we're gonna have to talk. That's for sure. And Dave's hanging out in the chat room in the lounge tonight, and Baz. Oh, she was trying to stay awake. Hopefully she made it along. Stars shine. The moon says hello. Let's see who else. Rod Dupree. Hope you're feeling better, buddy. Let's see here who else is hanging out. There's some more people. Dean Cooper, of course, our quasi terrorist is out there in the chat room. Yin. Sounds like that. You know when I'm making that noise. Let's see. Life and Times of JCM. That's right. Jim and Moore, the Jesus Christ of Monterey Bay. That's the guy that made the Camping for Stupids. Don't blame me. Frank Smith. Hey, buddy. Glad you made it in live tonight. Rock City Marco. I know you're going to listen to the archive, so I figured I'd say your name anyhow, even though I know you left early. Let's see here. Who else is flying around out there? Zachary Ekel. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how that's pronounced, but not positive. You're Hobo Man. How you doing, number 5? You're Hobo Man. Wow, that's an interesting one as well. I saw another one that I was going to have a hard time pronouncing down here just a little bit further because it's really all run together. You're Hobo Man 5, but that's not the one. Let's give me just a moment here. Wow, there's so many people out there. There's lots of conversation going on at the lounge. YouTube.com/SLounge podcast. If you're not there, you are definitely square if you're not hanging out live. Frank Smith, I know I said your name already. Man, where is this name that I'm looking for in here that I haven't mentioned yet? I'm just babbling along so that it doesn't have any dead air time. There it friggin' is. Hemp Publishing. I'm sure that's .com. I'll give you a little bit of a free plug because that's your friggin' YouTube name. Hemp Publishing. I'm sure that's .com. Glad you checked in with us tonight as well. I think that's the last of them. Yes, thank God. Pronounce I kill. Yes, Zachary Ekel. Yeah, I kill. Well, that's close enough. All right, that's who's hanging out in the chat room tonight. It is time for Mr. Batdorf. How you doing, Mr. Batdorf?
I'm doing well.
Yes, it's time to talk about that crazy ass Pakistani place, man. The Pakistani Bigfoot, the Barmanou. I mean, when I first looked at these, I was like, okay, there can't be a Pakistan. Can there really be a Bigfoot in the Middle East? And I started looking into it, and all of a sudden they come up with Pakistan. This is the place to be. Well, they're right, I think. Let's take a look at it. David, show us where we're talking about.
Well, when we think the Middle East, we're thinking of a very large region here, and we're Iran, Iraq, Saudi Arabia. We're familiar with these. Turkey's over here, Turkmenistan. This is that Kyrgyzstan, whatever, up here. But Pakistan, there's Afghanistan and Pakistan down in this area. Neighbors, India. And we're constantly talking about, the capital of Pakistan is Islamabad, which is right up here. And Islamabad, is in the rain shadow of the Himalayan mountains. So this is probably like your Bigfoot crossroads, if you will. If you're going through, our early transition, we hit We hit this big motherfucker right here. And we had two choices. You go over it or you go under it. And our migration shows that. Most other animals' migrations show that. The only animals that make use of this are specialists. You know, we have camels, and we have things that can survive on both sides of this plateau. We have, you know, you get up into this Gobi Desert and areas like that, and this high plateau really not Bigfoot country. We'll just put it that way. But once you get out of this area, you're straight into Siberia. Oh, there it is. Ta-da! And what we keep saying is that it didn't always look like this. We're coming up on our worst case scenarios of the drying period that's been happening for the last basically 3.5 million years. And this area still is our rain catch. And you can see where the water drains off of this in so many areas, and how it takes the nutrients down out of this desert and kind of made, you know, Cambodia and Vietnam out of it, right? Like, so this is a very important area. And one thing to not downplay is the fact that if you come right through here, like Nepal and Bhutan are right here. This is Yeti,
pure Yeti territory. Yeah.
And then right up around this corner here, which in the terms of like from Nepal to Pakistan or Kathmandu to Islamabad is kind of, I mean, you're looking at basically like Seattle to San Francisco. Right.
Now what we're talking about, let's give a description of it here. The Barmanou, a bipedal hominid primate cryptid, allegedly inhabits the mountainous region of western Pakistan. Shepherds living in the mountains have reported sightings. The Barmanou in Pakistan is the equivalent of the Bigfoot. The term Barmanou is used in several Pakistani languages. In addition to the name, there are other local names as well. The proposed range of the Barmanou covers the Chitral and the Karamun ranges between Pamir and the Himalaya, which is exactly what we're just showing you on the map there. The places that between the ranges of the two most famous cryptids, the Almas of Central Asia and the Yetis of the Himalayas.
When we went over the Tian Shan Mountains and these Hindu Kush was what we were focused mostly on when we were talking about the Almas, and this is what I was referring to as the Bigfoot crossroads from the over and under. Basically, is what you're looking at right here. And this is all pretty viable territory. It's pretty harsh, but a lot of things live there. I was recently watching a Wildest Pakistan. It's available on Netflix, PBS. Thank you. But this is one of the few areas where wolves, tigers, and bears all live together in one area. Like how fucked are we, right?
Right. We are no longer the top of the food chain.
Yeah. You've just lost your rank as top of the food chain because we have wolves, tigers, and bears. A fantastic area. Anyway, I'm sorry. I just have to go off on that because I was watching it just recently, and it really did blow my mind how wild and how lush and Pacific Northwest this was. I mean, it really kind of reminded me of home in a lot of ways. A lot of pine and other things that you don't expect when you think of Pakistan.
The Barmanou allegedly possesses both human and ape-like characteristics and has a reputation for abducting women and attempting to mate with them. It's also reported to wear animal skins upon its back and head. It appears in the folklore of the northern regions of Pakistan, and depending on where the stories come from, it tends to be either described as an ape or a wild man. And that becomes the question again, just like the Almas, are they apes? Are they wild men? Marco Polo talks about wild men in this area. Plato even talked about weird types of wild men to the east of them.
Well, that's the Hindu Kush stories that we talk about,
Right,
are right here. Like, so again,
Alexander fought the weird monkey tribes of the Hindu Kush trying to get into Asia. You know, I mean, were they monkey tribes or were they these things throwing rocks at them?
A good question, but you know, we have the Afghan and Pakistan capitals right here at the foothills of the Hindu Kush mountain range. So very interesting.
Now, when we get back to looking at the information on it there, the first search in Pakistan for the bipedal humanoid man was carried out by Spanish zoologist living in France, Jordi Magrenner, from 1987 to 1990. He wrote a paper, Les Hominoides Relics de Central, you know, the relic hominids of the Centrals, on the Pakistani cryptid, the Wild Man. An image of him in one of his drawings can be found at that location. He later researched the Barmanou extensively in the 1990s. He was murdered in Afghanistan in 2002. Lauren Coleman wrote that he collected more than 50 first-hand sighting accounts, and all eyewitness recognized the reconstruction of Hebela's monopolagatus, a living Neanderthal. They picked that one to be the Barmanou. Now, I got some pictures here of some things that they claim of our artist drawings of the Barmanou. Let me go ahead and bring these up. They're actually pretty interesting because they all kind of match one another. When you look at them I'm still waiting. There we go. Sorry.
That was always one of my what I would have loved to have done is put together like a panel of eyewitnesses and people, and I still do, and I always poll people when show them different photographs of reconstructions of early hominids, and I still get a lot more afferensis than anything else.
You know, this is hand drawings or descriptive drawings of the creatures as they come. There's a female with giant sack-like boobages with no hair. Now that kind of strikes me as normal. Gorillas don't have patches of hair around their nipples or on their females' breasts. So, it would be. But if you look at the structure between this one and this one, they look here. Let me just get this completely out of the way. This one and this one, the structure of the beast, the way the shoulders come across, the way the arms come down to almost the knees. There's a lot of things that meet male, female in these two pictures. Look at them drugs. We go on to the next one. Now, here happens to be one sitting with an erection. Now,
hello.
Yeah, we laugh about that, but seriously, we know monkeys will sit around and bang their dang just because they feel like it. Why wouldn't the Barmanou do the same thing? Bam, whoop, masturbate. He's practicing his religion. However, again, with the drawing itself, look at the width of the shoulders, the length of the arms, the hair everywhere. It's definitely a male, so we don't have any question about that one. Here's another rendition of one. They've all got this same, early man faces more so than ape-like faces. The fingers on this one actually have nails versus claws. A strange-looking claw on the thumb at that.
Well, what's interesting to me, like, when these photos are, or when these are drawn, like, how much actual forensic data do they have about early man and about the cranial capacities of early man to all draw this very, we talk about cone-headed Sasquatch all the time, and I'm not really sure what that's all about, because if you go into East Asia, you see something very different, which is this very flat, smaller brain casing, occipital bun wearing kind of like early, like late Australopithecine, right? Where the eyebrows don't really, the head goes straight back from the eyebrows, and that makes total sense. And it makes it seem as though the head comes straight off the shoulders because there's not a huge top of the head like we have. It's not blown up like a balloon yet. And
all of them are so very similar. I'm sure it's the same person drawing them. So it would seem that they might have a little bit of bias into them, but
that becomes the problem. But again, like if you look at things that weren't drawn by the same person or people who weren't influenced in any other way, and I always find like these particular images seem really interesting, although these are very much the same. Like if you go back a couple images there, there's two that are almost go back or maybe forward, that one and that one are the two that are just the bust, and then the one with the erection are so similar that they could have been drawn by the same person.
They were drawn by the same person. If you look down here, the signature is the same on both of them.
So definitely this person had a preconceived notion, which was probably based on that science
descriptions of it, maybe,
and trying to fit it into something that is a scientific fact, which is
one of the other things.
The problem with the reconstruction.
One of the other things that was brought up was the Minnesota Iceman. Now, of course, we know that the Minnesota Iceman that exists today is not actually the original Minnesota Iceman that was examined way back when. It is actually a recreation of the one, from what we understand, the one that was way back when actually decayed out to a point that they couldn't do anything with it anymore. Not saying that it was real, but whatever it was just wasn't able to be put on display anymore. So they started putting this replica on display as well. And the Minnesota Iceman was just at the Cryptozoology Museum up there with Lauren Coleman last year. So it is making the rounds, but is it fashioned after one of these type things? It has the swept back forehead. It has the strange brows. It was of that same range. These aren't claimed to be 8-foot creatures. These are claimed to be, a creature of 2 meters or 2.5 meters.
Which is still fairly large, but I think oftentimes people exaggerate their. So, what are we trained to see? We're trained to see faces. We're trained to see human faces. We're trained to see eyes. We're trained to see, for the fear factor of seeing an animal at night is that we immediately try to assess the size and the impending doom of that. What do I have to expect from this animal? How big is it? What is it? So you see eyes glare in the dark, and you immediately have to assess its size. And we always do that bigger. We assess the danger as larger than anything else. But if we were to see a Neanderthal today, we would be fascinated and kind of creeped out by its face, because our brain wants to make people's faces a face. Case in point, have you ever seen like the Burt Reynolds mustache fractal? Your mind just can't put it together. You know what it is, and you can't put it together, and it makes you hallucinate almost immediately, like this mustache in the middle, mustache on the eyes, forearms. Like you can't handle that because you're programmed to see a face, and when that face doesn't match, you assess the body, and it totally separate. Fascinating, and it's something that happens. But I think that a lot of the Sasquatch sightings, the size of the thing, based on the fact that its face is similar but different than ours. The size is over exaggerated until if you were to sit there and get used to it for a while, you'd probably be like, yeah, that's probably only like 5 or 6 feet tall.
Right. But
in the heat of the moment, in the dark, in the glance that you have, seeing something like that, you would assess as, it's really big,
Especially with that 10-inch penis he was sitting there jacking on. I mean, wow, that was impressive. Hey, that's going to kind of wrap it up for our discussion on the Pakistani Bigfoot over there. Next week, we're going to be talking about the what monster? I can never pronounce that.
Mongyon.
The Mongyon monster. Yeah, the late, great Mitch Waite's subject of study will be the topic of our discussion next week for sure. Don't forget to stop by and see us on Monday nights for Bigfoot Entertainment Weekly. This week we'll be doing Bigfoot's Reflection, something I hadn't seen before. It's actually on Netflix if you want to check it out there. And don't forget Monster Info. They are just about wrapped up for season 1 of Monster Info already. I think there's like 4 more episodes to come. And Bigfoot Campfire Stories will be returning by April 15th. Yay!
Ooh.
Yeah, dude, no point in putting them out when revenue sucks. That's for sure. Well, I want to thank everybody for watching. This has been the Squatchers Lounge Podcast, Season 4, Episode 12 already. We've already put out more episodes than your friggin' regular TV series would have all year long. Thanks for watching. I'm Reverend Jeff for Dr. David Badford, pseudoscientist Esquire. Thanks for watching, and may the Squatch be with you. Little Birdie says we may be scratching.